All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the third session of day 2 of GCon 360. We've got a great today. I'm joined by Mat Hamlin, the Director of Product at Spanning Backup by EMC. He's going to be talking about 3 ways to recover from data loss in Google Apps. So it's a great presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to him in just a second. But before I do, there's a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, just our general housekeeping notes for GCon. So we are doing questions once again in the Q&A app. So if this is your first time tuning in, make sure you click on the squares in the top right corner of your screen, and you should be able to switch back and forth between the Q&A app and the Showcase app. So in the Q&A app, we'll have our questions there. And in the Showcase app, we'll provide some helpful links to different things throughout the presentation. So on that note, if you stay tuned until the end of the presentation, I'll make the form available to enter to win some of our exciting free giveaways, like the new Chromebook Pixel that we're giving out. And this t-shirt is another one of the giveaways that we're doing. And lastly, I had a question actually come into my inbox from Jason. And Jason, I'll follow up with you directly. But the question was about how the winners are being selected. So the big giveaways, the Chromebook Pixels, are being provided by our featured sponsors. So they're going to be selecting those at random and announcing those. And for all other giveaways, we'll be handling those and also selecting them at random and relaying the winners directly to them. So it's all completely random. We'll throw the names into a spreadsheet and select them from there at random. Just as a heads up, that's how the winners are being selected. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Like I said, it's Mat Hamlin, Director of Product at Spanning. So Matt, if you want to go ahead and take it away, we can get started.
Great, thanks Andrew. Well, thanks very much for allowing us the opportunity to present today. We're definitely excited to be part of GCon again this year here in 2015. So just a little bit about what we do here at Spanning. Spanning is a company that focuses on providing enterprise class backup and recovery for data in the cloud, so specifically Google Apps, Salesforce, and Office 365 soon. And we protect against a lot of things like human error, malicious intent, things that happen in the environment that are driven by users and actions, and not typically from traditional issues like disaster recovery scenarios. Myself, I'm Director of Products here at Spanning. I help drive overall product direction and strategy. I've been in the industry for quite a while. So I want to start off with a quote. This is from Jason Buffington. He's a senior analyst at Enterprise Strategy Group focused on data protection. He's been a data protection professional for 15 or 20 years. And recently in a webinar that he did, he said, for this quote, he said one of the things that he's most interested in 2015 is backup and recovery for SaaS applications. Then he went on to say this, which is, as you move to cloud applications, unless you're using one of the few SaaS data protection solutions, your data has just gone from well protected, meaning on premises, to unprotected, right? And I think it's very interesting that the analyst and the market in general is starting to ask this question about data protection for data that's born in the cloud or created inside of SaaS applications like Google Apps environment. And so we'll go through and cover a lot of the foundational statements behind this quote from him. I've had many conversations with him about this in the past. So in today's webinar, we'll talk about common ways data gets lost inside of Google Apps. Not typically, doesn't have to be exactly fully deleted from the environment. So there are lots of ways data can get lost, and we'll go over 3 specific use cases. We'll also talk about 3 ways to recover from those data loss events, right? What's the fastest way to recover? What's the best way to recover with all of the information necessary for your organization to continue working? And finally, what data Google can and can't keep safe and why, what their SLAs say related to data protection and application service. So I alluded to this before. The top reasons for data loss in SaaS applications specifically are listed here. So human mistakes, people make mistakes all the time, and errors, programmatic errors, and that can be either an integration that you have with a third-party application that's affecting your data inside of the Google environment. It could be synchronizing a new phone, which might accidentally overwrite your contacts or calendar events. So anything where there's data being changed through integration or synchronization. Of course, malicious insiders, people within your organization, whether employees or partners, going and destroying data. Also within in Google Apps environment being such a collaborative environment, you may be given access, you may be giving access to individuals outside of your direct organization, partners or even customers who have legitimate access to certain things inside of your employees' Google Drive accounts, right? So their behavior affects your organization's ability to continue work. External threats are always a risk that's out there, be it someone gets access to a machine that's already logged into Google, whether somebody is able to impersonate you and log into your Google Apps or one of your employees' Google Apps accounts. Once they're in, they can do a lot of damage. The last reason here is, viruses and malware. And we see this a lot, and this is actually one of the use cases I discussed a little bit later, which is that things that affect your files that reside on even your laptop or your desktop, right? Those get synchronized up to Google Drive, and so those are still threats to the data that's in your SaaS applications. And so, interestingly, none of the things that I just covered are, the traditional reasons for data loss, right? I mean, traditional on-premise solutions focus on the things on the right here for backup and recovery. And if you moved to Google Apps from Lotus Domino or Microsoft Exchange, or any sort of applications that are on premises, whether it's a file share, whatever it might be, a lot of times your IT organization, your data protection professionals are focusing on these things, on hardware failure, software failure, natural disaster, power outage, all those things that are really focused on making sure the application itself is always up and secure. And so what we find is that when you move to a SaaS application, the responsibility for data protection is shared. Part of the responsibility is yours. Part of the responsibility is Google's. And Google's very, very good at this, right? Their service is secure, reliable, highly available. They even say they strive for a RTO and RPO of 0, which means restore time objective, restore point objective. Their goal is to make sure that nothing ever gets lost, so there's not a need for recovery from their application side, right? They prepare for zero downtime of the entire Google Apps suite of applications, right? And they're responsible to make sure the applications are always available, your data that's inside of those applications that they've protected with the controls that they have. But all these reasons on the left are reasons for data loss that you initiate, or people that are impersonating you or working on your behalf initiate. And Google doesn't protect you from that. There's no SLA, service level agreement, that Google provides for the changes that you make to your own data. What we found is that SaaS data loss is common. We did a survey last year. There's been other surveys in the past by other companies. The survey we did last year was in conjunction with IDG. And we asked the question, right? Have you lost data in SaaS applications? And 58% of the companies said that they had reported data loss. In general, we did a survey of administrators or IT professionals. I feel like that likely that number could be a bit higher. I think that it's fairly common in an organization for end users to lose data and potentially never even report it back to the IT organization. If you were at a company that was using Microsoft Exchange on-prem, you were probably trained fairly well that if you lose an email or two, if you lose some files, that you might not call the IT help desk. They don't have a great way to get that back. It might take quite a while to pull back individual emails or individual files. Right, and they may not even want to do that. They may have trained the organization not to call us unless it's catastrophic. The data loss that occurs inside of a SaaS applications, Google Apps specifically, a lot of times it's not a catastrophic data loss because of hardware failure, software failure, or somebody making a mistake that wipes out everything. A lot of times it's a folder. It's a set of calendars, recurring calendar events that had attachments on top of it. It's a little bit more granular. Those type of data loss events is specifically what we cover for, and it's fairly common in the environment. Spanning restored over 10 million things last year. 10 million items were restored for our customers. Things being emails and folders and files, calendar events, etc. All right, so I'm going to go through 3 use cases for data loss. In general, these use cases aren't specifically related to somebody completely losing data out of the Google Apps environment. There are ways that you can lose data that have a significant impact on your productivity, your organization's ability to continue working with the data that they need to get their job done every day. So this first one here I called folder delete grenade, and you'll see why. Typically in a Google Drive folder structure for an individual user, it could look something like this. So we've got a top level folder called use case 1. I actually put owned by Ryan here. So we've got 3 actors in this scenario. We've got Ryan, Joe, and Pete. Ryan's going to own the top level folder. Underneath that, there's a couple files, one owned by Ryan, one owned by Pete, right? And so this is very common across our customer base, even here at Spanning, right? I own a folder in my Google Drive that is a repository for a lot of things that my team develops, the product team develops, right? So I own the folder, but content is created within that, both files and folders that are created and owned by someone else. So very similar structure here. We've got two folders underneath the primary folder. One's owned by Ryan, so he's got use case 1 and child folder, and then another one's owned by Pete. And so inside that folder, we have content owned by Ryan, Pete, and Joe. So again, just trying to lay out how we see our. We talk to customers; they've got similar scenarios, and I'm sure that you have something similar in your environment as well. And so what I'm going to do for this use case is I'm going to delete that top folder, use case 1. And we'll go through this in just a second. I do want to talk about what I believe is going to happen, which is that since Ryan's going to initiate a delete of that top folder, anything that he owns, that folder and anything inside will be gone. Things that he didn't own, such as this top-level doc owned by Pete, the doc and child owned by Pete, those things will become orphaned. So they will still be around because the owner is someone else, someone who didn't initiate the delete. The sharing settings on those will change. And so what ends up happening is that you have a situation where one person's actions has affected data and content owned by a number of other individuals. And it's not that other, the intent may have been to delete the content that Ryan owns, but as a side effect, he's orphaned data that other people own. I made it very, very difficult to find that, change the sharing settings, which then could have altered who in the organization or outside the organization has access to that data that they need. So I'm actually going to run through this. We're going to go take a look and hop over to Google Drive. So as you can see here, I am logged in as Ryan. Here's the use case 1. Here's that folder I discussed earlier. You can go look inside, see that there's folders. Here's one owned by Pete, owned by Ryan. Some content here. And if I switch over and look at Pete, so now we're looking at Pete's view of the world here. As you can see, he does have access to this top-level folder owned by Ryan. And then I can click here. Show that owned by Ryan, and you can see the same folder and file structure. And again, as it elaborates here, this top level folder is owned by Ryan, but Pete has access to it, Joe has access to it, and anyone at mathamlin.com can view that as well. So this is the sharing permissions that are currently set on this folder and the underlying contents. So if I go in as Ryan again, come in here, and I delete this. It says open folder has been trashed. You've trashed a folder that you're reviewing. You have been moved to an untrashed folder that this folder was in. So basically what happens is it says, okay, this folder's gone. You're reviewing it in the user interface. It's gone now. And then continue. All right, so we're here. Now what happened to Pete? Well, Pete says, his UI changes and says this folder that you were looking at is in the owner's trash. To view this folder, ask the owner to restore it. Dismiss that. Now, one of the things that we see amongst our customer base as well is that when things are moved to the trash, so Ryan moved all his data to the trash, it's actually the sharing settings on it remain, and there's some level of access still granted to those who had access to it in the first place. So a lot of IT organizations that we work with, they're trying to balance this access, the collaboration capabilities, with ensuring that people have proper rights to the data they need to have access to. So in this case, Ryan moved the data, moved the folder to the trash, but I'm going to go ahead and remove it, delete it forever, because even as it stands in the trash, certain people still have access to it. Sharing is still accessible, which probably isn't the intent that Ryan has. Right? So if I go ahead and delete this forever, it says this folder is about to be permanently deleted. You can't undo this action. Okay. So now the question becomes, what just happened? What actually was carried out? So as you can see, it's not there anymore. We don't have that data there. All right. If I go to look at Pete here, we can see that the data is not there either. We don't have access to it anymore. So it seems to be gone, right? The data that was there is no longer available. But if we look at the files that were there, we should see this top level doc, which is owned by Pete. Pete should still have access to that because he was the owner. So if I do this, It's there. So it's still there. It wasn't removed. It was just orphaned. So the point being here is that the file is still there, but it's not in my drive. It's not, you can't navigate to it, right? And if this user, Pete, had actually synchronized data down to his laptop, Mac or Windows laptop, it wouldn't be there either, right? So we've got this situation where because this file was in a folder structure that was deleted, it's now become orphaned. So you can still search for it, but there's not a direct way. So, as an end user, they might not understand that. They might not understand that the data that they need is now gone because it can't be navigated to anymore. And we can also see that the file itself, Pete's the owner, and Ryan retains access to it so he can edit. But what about Joe, and what about anyone who has the link? Those are stripped as well as part of that delete process of that top level folder. So if I look at activity, we can actually see that. Ryan restricted access to an item, removed Joe's access, and removed anyone who has the link. And that was just a side effect of deleting the top level folder because that's where the original permissions were set. All right, so the thing I want to look at real quick here is this child in doc owned by Joe. Very similar, what would happen here is that will still remain. And in this case, it will be accessible by Ryan because he was the original owner of the top level folder, so he retains some level of access. Pete, because he owns the child folder that it was in, and then, but the link to anyone in the organization will be gone. So let's look for that, doc and child. All right, so it says you restricted access as Ryan to these two folders. Let's actually go look in. I'm switched over here now, I'm logged in as Pete. Let's do that. See this one. So this one, when Ryan deleted the folder, he actually restricted access to Joe and anyone who had the link. Oh, I'm not looking at Joe. All right, we'll switch back over here. So point being is that in this case, there was a delete action that occurred by the owner of the folder. It's probably legitimate. He may have intended everything within the folder to be gone forever. A lot of times if it's a project that you're working on with a third party, you may be contractually obligated to remove all that data. Right. We definitely have customers that have that situation where they have partnerships and contracts with third-party organizations related to a project, whether it's a construction project or an IT project. And when the project ends, they are responsible for ensuring all the data is gone. So the intent here, right, for if Ryan was taking this action, might have been to remove everything in the folder, which didn't happen. But there's definitely some side effects, which takes that data and explodes it out, right? It turns into little bits that are sprinkled around in different places that you can't see through the UI. You have to search, you have to know what was there, and kind of reconstruct what was there. Okay. So what happened? Anything owned by Ryan was deleted all the way down. Anything left is shared with Ryan because he was the owner of the top level folder. Read-only link was removed from everything in that entire folder structure all the way down. And then all access is kind of based off of the ownership, right? So if you owned a file, you still have access to it. It still exists. You can search to it. You can search for it and find it. Maybe look in your recent history if you've edited it at all recently. But it's not in my drive. It's not, you can't navigate to it. And so, the fallout of that again is it just makes it very, very difficult when these situations occur to have your employees, partners, customers understand what happened, right? How did they get to the data they need to do their job? Nothing shows since it has no parent. It's kind of been orphaned, as it's called. Again, you can find them via search, but there's not a good way to ascertain the damage. It's not a good way to understand the entirety of the fallout of deleting that folder and to recreate that, right? It's lost. It's not a good way to fully understand what happened to every file and try to put it back. So with spanning, we do make that much, much easier. So let's take a look at that. All right, so logged in as Ryan still. So I'm going to go into spanning backup, which is our product for Google Apps. I am logged in as Ryan here. I will go to my account and click restore. And so spanning backup for Google Apps does full backup of all 5 services: Gmail, Drive, Calendars, Contacts, and Sites. It's automated daily backup with unlimited storage, unlimited versions. So in this scenario, I'm going to go to Drive and look at the files and folders that were in place at a previous point in time. So this is a backup that ran yesterday, or today, looks like actually, at 1:08 p.m. But I can actually go through any of the previous backups that spanning has conducted. Okay. Let's jump to the latest one. So we can see that file folder structure is still there from yesterday's backup. It does have all of the children as well as the docs. If I click on that, I can kind of verify that this was shared with Ryan and Joe. Those were still there. The folders are there as well. And so spanning, if you have a situation where data gets destroyed in this fashion or just lost in this fashion, you can click from any point in time, select that folder, and I can say restore. We do want to restore it to Ryan's account, and I can choose to restore those sharing settings. All right, so as that's running, we should see that data start to come back into Ryan's Google Drive. There we go. So now we have a folder that says restored from April 28th, 2015. If I go in there, we should start seeing that data come back. There's the folder. It's been returned. It's shared with the people that it was shared with originally, including that anyone link. You can drill down. Child folders are there. Documents are there. So it's back just the way that it was. And this is a non-destructive restore, we call it, because we put it into this other folder called restored from. So this folder is back just the way that it was into the environment as it stood yesterday. And then, of course, you can move this to My Drive. You can move it and navigate to wherever you want. Okay. So there's our first use case related to how data gets lost in Google Apps and how you can easily recover, why point-in-time recovery of an entire folder structure, large set of files is important. So for the second data loss use case, I'm going to talk about the CryptoLocker malware. We've had a number of customers, across our thousands of customers get the CryptoLocker malware, which has adversely affected the data that resides in their Google Drive environment. And so for those of you who are not familiar, CryptoLocker is a malware, or some people say ransomware, that infects Microsoft Windows machines. Typically, it encrypts files and holds them ransom. So it uses RSA encryption and goes and pulls the contents of files, such as Word documents, and encrypts it. So the user themselves, end user, can't use that data anymore. It's all encrypted. And they're notified that says, hey, your files have been encrypted. Pay us, and we'll give you the key to unencrypt them. And so what are your options to recover? So if you do ever get the CryptoLocker malware, first, your options to recover are pay. You can pay the ransom. I think it's somewhere upwards of $500 or thousands of dollars. It hasn't happened to me, so I'm not sure exactly what the cost is there. But there are other ways. You could spend kind of hours and days trying to determine and figure out what was infected, what was not infected. You might be able to go into Google Drive or other means and kind of sift through and figure out how you could roll back to certain versions. And I'll kind of show you options related to that. But the most, the other thing to remember here is that, Google Drive it's a collaboration tool, right? It's really good at synchronizing data across a variety of environments, right? Not just for one person back and forth to Google Drive from their laptop, but also to anyone else who has that shared with, right? So if you have data on your laptop that gets infected, it gets encrypted and then synchronized to Google Drive, and then that file gets synchronized down to other people in your environment. Whether it's employees or partners, anyone who has access to that have added it to their drive, My Drive. Google's really good at synchronizing data, right? And so it gets moved not only from your box to the cloud, but also down to other people. All right, so let's take a look at that use case. For that one, I'm going to go in here, and of course, I didn't actually infect myself with the CryptoLocker, but I just kind of wanted to show you what it might look like, after CryptoLocker comes in and starts affecting data. So in this case, you can see that this file is seems to be okay. I can come in and take a look. File looks good. Best of times, worst of times. That one seems to be fine. If I go to the second file, that one's been encrypted, right? And so again, it's a bit difficult to figure out exactly the extent of the damage without really starting to go through understand file by file what's happened, what's going on. Files could be spread across multiple folder structures, nested folder structures, right? And so, if this does happen to you, if this does affect your data, there are ways to get back, right? I could come in here and say, well, April 27th was good. I got infected late in the day on April 27th, right? So I can restore this version. So in that case, I was able to get back, right? So I was encrypted by that malware, and I can kind of revert back. But imagine doing this for 500 files, sifting through 1,500 files, trying to figure out exactly what was encrypted, what wasn't. Do I have a previous version? Going into every file, right? So it's pretty significant impact on your ability to recover the data that you need, right? And so the main thing here is while you're doing all that, while you're trying to figure out how it's affected everything inside of your drive environment, you may have shared things, right? And so in this case, Joe can edit, it looks like here. So let's go log in as Joe. Let me hear it's Joe. He has access to that folder because it was shared. Pete got the CryptoLocker Malware virus, and if I go in here, I, as the partner or customer potentially, right, another employee can see, oh, this file that Pete owns seems to have gotten hacked, right? And so, you can go in here and see. So, the fact that, again, Google Drive is a very collaborative environment. You're sharing data internally and externally. You can't risk, having a situation where you have a large-scale malware attack and it's visible to people, internally, but much more importantly, externally, right? So if this happened, you did notice what's going on, you could immediately pull the sharing from tons of the information that you have out there, but you don't want to restrict people's access for days while you try to go clean it up, right? So, a good way to recover from that, we've been able to help a number of our customers with this is, again, focus on that point in time restore with spanning. So as an example here, let's go to Pete.
Hey, Matt, before you get into that example, we had a question about CryptoLocker specifically.
Okay.
So they were just asking this issue where the files are corrupted inside of Google Drive. That use case refers to somebody who's using Drive at the desktop app and having the automatic sync to the web. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clear that up because we had a question about that. So thanks. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. No. But it's a great question. Yeah, and one that needs to be clarified, right? The point is with with Google Drive content, it is typically pulled down to a laptop, a desktop. Most of our customers have that situation set up. You have some organizations that have Chromebooks, those things where things don't move very much. But in general, we've got a large set of our customers that will synchronize data down to laptops or desktops, and it really just increases that attack plane for malicious behavior, whether it's malware, ransomware, or whatever it might be, or even mistakes, right? If you've got the Google Drive tool on your laptop, you might just drag something to the trash on your laptop, right? And that affects the data, like people's access to data in a variety of places as well. Okay, so in this scenario, again, we've in spanning, you can pretty easily come in, log into Pete, click restore, go to Drive. Again, figure out that point in time where things were in the right space. Let's see here. Oh, that's the wrong one. I think it's Joe, actually. Should have been as Ryan here. So there we go. So there. So again, we can go to any point in time in the past. Maybe we want to roll back to the 27th. Go to this use case 2 folder where we think the data is pre-encryption by CryptoLocker. Select the folder, restore it back into Ryan's account. Oops, I didn't click the restore with shared settings, so Joe won't have access. We did that just a second ago. All right. So we see another folder that came in here at 234, restored, use case 2. The files should just start opening in here. As you can see, they're coming back here. If they are coming back, This must have been after I had actually done the encryption here. I didn't go back far enough. Let's jump back over here. All right, so the third use case I wanted to cover is cross-user restore of deleted mail. And so what happens oftentimes, and this, we've heard this story from a number of our customers, you get mail that's been deleted either by an active or a lot of times former employee. Somebody leaves the organization and they go clean up all of their email before they leave. And then at some point in time, the organization realizes that that would be important information for the new employee, for a different department, manager, whatever. It might be related to a project. A lot of times, even if the account still exists, maybe you've retained that person's account once they left the organization for 30 days, 90 days. If they've gone in and actually deleted the data into their trash, it's gone forever, right? And even things in trash only remain there for 30 days before they age out. And so in this case, what's your options? What's your options for getting that data back if it's been fully deleted? And we have a lot of customers. Sometimes the answer is Google Vault. It's a way to put retention hold on individual accounts to retain all email for a certain defined period of time. It's typically, it's a different tool for a different purpose, right? Google Vault is an e-discovery tool built by lawyers for lawyers. That used to be their tagline. And my peer over there, their product guy, wasn't actually a lawyer. And so, again, I wanted to point out ways that data loss can occur and restore can be extremely difficult, where the data itself may not be really, really gone, right? And so in this scenario, employee left, deleted a lot of data. It's not in Google anymore. It's aged out of the trash bin, or they've purged it completely. But let's say that the company has Vault in place. So let's go take a look at what that would look like. Right. So we're logged in here into our spending demo account as Joe. I've actually gone through and deleted data already and purged it from the trash bin. Literally what it was just emails. I just picked a few here. It was status emails from our product. So your spending backup, domain stats. And as you can see, we got a gap here. 25th through the 20th seem to be missing. All the ones before and all the ones after, but where did these go, right? So we're going to try and figure out ways to get that back. Now, if I'm the end user, there's no way for me to get it back. It's gone, right? Because Vault, again, is a tool for e-discovery purposes. Most organizations that I've spoken with, they limit access to any of their e-discovery tools to a very, very finite set of individuals, right? And just the entirety of the corporate email is in there forever, depending on what your retention is set up for. And so think about the restore process. An individual finds out or figures out that he might need data. A manager maybe said, well, yeah, I know that a former employee had that. Let's see if we can figure it out. See if we can get that data back, right? And so I'm actually going to hop over to Vault and show what that might look like to get that data back. Now, this whole use case is predicated on the fact that I already had a retention policy in place and assigned a license for Google Vault to the user who's the former employee. A lot of times our customers that are using Vault, they won't put a full hold or retention on everyone in their organization. They do it when there's an e-discovery litigation activity in place, or a matter, as they call it, right? And so again, even if you have Vault, right, unless you're there's a good chance that you may not have been fully retaining the data. In this case, let's assume that we were for this account. So I come in, this is Vault. I would say create a new matter, new investigation, right? Okay, there we are. Okay, and so again, it's a little difficult to figure out how to use here, but we go through and search and say we want to search for mail from certain accounts here. Joe sent from and to. Well, I'm not sure when those were sent. Oh, well, I do actually. We know that one in this case, right? Because it was the dates. That was the way I was looking for that. But if you're looking for data that has to do with a certain subject or a certain title, you may not know the sent and received dates, right? So it can be a little bit more difficult. All right, let's just do April 1st today. In terms, domain stats. So there's my spending backup domain stats. So they are there. They were held, even though they're not in the Gmail, where an end user can get access to it. They did luckily get captured in Google Vault. Now, what are my options for restore? Now, remember, the end user or manager called IT Help Desk. IT Help Desk said they don't have access to Vault. You need to call a legal team, see if they can take some time to go figure this out, right? And so then they get in here and they can see here's all the emails, a certain time frame, and so they can actually export those. Well, if you export those, that comes out into an inbox format. And so, the process for actually taking that inbox format and getting it back into Google or Gmail is also a difficult task, right? And so there's a support FAQ inside of Google on this, right? So they'll give you back an inbox format file. The way to get it back then is to use a third-party tool. A lot of times I recommend using something like Thunderbird, setting up connection to your Gmail account. Of course, in this case, it'd be the actual end user who needs the contents account, which the administrator or the IT organization may not really have access to. I'm sure the legal team doesn't have access to. And even then, you have to set it up with an IMAP connection. Some customers don't have IMAP turned on. So again, the process to get that data back and usable and in the hands of the person who needs it is very strained. It's very difficult. All right. And let's see here. In the process of spinning backup, again, I'm logged in as Joe. I click on the Restore tab here. I go to my Gmail Restore. I search for domain stats backup. I've got that here. Let's do that again. Backup domain stats. And we'll search through the email that's backed up for Joe. As we can see, here they are. So I can find the, you can come in here, preview that if you want to. But I can come in and say, oh yeah, I needed the 25th, 24th, 23rd, etc. And 20th. Okay. And then getting it back and usable is as simple as clicking Restore. I can choose which account to put it back into. This is the third-party restore. So let's say that the new person who needs access to this information is Bob. I can click Bob, go, and that will be restored directly into Bob's account. Again, so in addition to fully losing data in Google, which happens a lot, right? People delete things forever. Malicious behavior happens. You delete an account, fully deleted account, and anything that user owned after 5 days is gone forever. So there's definitely lots of ways to permanently lose data in Google Apps. But my goal here in the webinar today was to show you ways that data gets lost, but maybe not fully deleted, right? Difficulty in finding the data you're looking for that affects people internally in your organization and externally. Finding ways to get data back quickly and easily so it doesn't require, a ticket to the IT help desk, cost that's incurred from that, potentially trying to figure out, someone on your legal team to help out, how long does it take to get it back, right? So a lot of it's around restore perfection, ease of use of restore, allowing end users to find and recover from their own data loss events. All right, so to summarize, what Google provides and what they don't, right? They can't really fully protect your data, and they don't give you an SLA related to, making sure that they can restore your data when the cause is you. They do with your data what you tell them to do. That actually is in their privacy agreement. The data is yours. What you tell us to do, we promise to do with it. If you tell us to delete data, we promise to delete it. Okay. Their data recovery is focused internally, not externally, which means that everything that they do is to make sure that their application, that their platform is always available. And if for any reason there's any failures in their application, that they can recover and continue to provide service, right? But it's their data protection is primarily focused on ensuring that their application is always up and available to serve your data and to do with your data what you ask them to do. And here's a quote from one of the directors of security: if something bad happens to your data, ultimately you're still responsible. Number one risk is the end user. How will you impact or minimize the impact of a breach? So this is something he said, in related to breach, but it speaks to the same the same tune here, which is you own your data, you affect your data. They promise to carry out whatever actions that you request of them. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about, is really your responsibility. Back to that one of those first slides there. If your organization has any level of oversight from a compliance standpoint, right? If you're in the have anything to do with finance and you fall under PCI, or if you're have anything to do with insurance, maybe you fall under the model audit rule. If your company's publicly traded, you fall under SOX. Any of those things, or even just good IT practices, states that you should maintain proper business continuity of your data. And so COBIT 5 is a compliance framework that's often used to evaluate an organization and their controls, IT controls, whether, regardless of what the actual controls framework is, right? So if it's a model audit rule or SOX, whatever it might be. And so in the COBIT framework, there's a control, DSS 04. It says the organization must establish and maintain a plan to enable business and IT to respond to incidents and disruptions, right, of any kind, in order to continue operation of critical business processes and required IT services, and maintain availability of information, so the data, right, at a level acceptable to the enterprise. Right, it's acceptable for your organization to go without data that has been lost, right, for a week. What about your partners? Okay, and the thing I thought was most interesting is the second part, right, which is when an auditor comes in, the way he measures an organization is the percent of successful and timely restoration from backup. How quick can you get the data back and get your people working again? So best practices, again, it's your responsibility to back up the data. That responsibility is no different than if this was an application that was on premises. And your ability to continue to run the business and interact with your partners, interact with your customers is paramount. Okay. All right, so that concludes the main portion here of the presentation. Spanning backup for Google Apps, again, is complete backup and direct restore of all the data in your Google Apps environment, mail, drive, contacts, calendars, and sites. We focus on true point-in-time backup, making a restore of data very simple, very easy for both the administrator and the end user. We also keep the administrator extremely informed of what's been going on. Our status reporting is extremely granular down to, for each account, if there's a file or a email or contacts that we didn't back up for some reason, we'll tell you what that reason is and give you direct action to go resolve that. Our goal with that is in our reporting there is to make sure that you never come to our product and at that point find out that something wasn't backed up in the first place, right? So, again, the product is available through the App Exchange, not App Exchange, so the Google Apps Marketplace. It is a 14-day free trial. We encourage you to go and install it, try it out, run through it, and bring in some of your end users and see if they are able to easily come in and find and restore the lost data. And then Spending also has a number of free tools available in the marketplace as well. I encourage you to go take a look at them. We have an undelete for Google Calendar, which will allow you to get back calendar events that have been deleted within the last 14 to 30 days. We have an audit log viewer, which is just a nice streaming view of the audit event data inside of Google, and then stats for Google Drive, which will kind of give you a nice pie graph of the content inside of your domain and break it down by user and by type, those kinds of things as well. All right, that concludes my time for today. Thank you very much again, Andrew, for the opportunity to present here at GCon, and thanks to everyone on the phone for taking time today to listen and hopefully learn a little bit about backup and recovery.
All right, Matt, thanks a lot. We got a ton of great questions. So
okay.
I don't know that we're going to be able to get to all of them. I'm going to try and get us through as quickly as possible. Actually, the top question was something that you answered during the presentation. So the comparison between, or comparing and contrasting Vault and spanning backup. So I think you did a pretty good job of covering that already. So okay. I think we can move past that one. And then another top one is asking about restoring one person's files to another person's drive. So it might be used if a user leaves the organization and you want to restore the files to another user. Can you touch on that, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely support that, and we have a lot of customers that actually will use that functionality as people move in and out of their organization. When Google does provide a way to kind of transfer ownership, but it's at the account level, or down at each little file. And sometimes when somebody leaves your organization, you don't want all of their data to go, to a single individual person. So absolutely, you can log into, administrator can log in, access that person's drive contents, do a search, right? Select the things that are important, at that point in time, and then restore it into another person's account.
Great, thanks, Matt. And while we're doing these questions, I did want to mention that the form, the giveaway form, is up in the Showcase app. So everybody that is interested in filling out that form for the giveaway, you can make your way over to the Showcase app and fill that out. And when you're done, come on back and listen to a couple of questions that Matt's going to answer before we run out of time. So the next one I wanted to get to, and you did touch on this a little bit, was talking about the orphan folder file issue. So they were asking, it's a nightmare to recover and put files back in place, especially when you're dealing with, 500 plus gigabytes of data and millions of items. So can you touch on that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of, I think the question is kind of related to what I showed, right? I mean, example I showed was fairly straightforward, right? It's 3 folders and 6 files or something. So, in a large scale environment, even here at Spanning, again, I have a folder called Product Team, and there's probably 30 folders and, I don't know, 300 files in there, right? And so, one mistake can cause a lot of damage, spread things across a variety of places and make it where it's not, you can't find it. It's hard to navigate. And again, if you've got, some of that content synced to my drive, it gets pulled off, the individual's drive. And if they're traveling, right, it's not there. They thought it was there. It should be there. Where did it go? So it can cause some damage, And I think the point about the sharing getting affected is a huge one, right? It's that it's not only does the data get kind of orphaned, but kind of some of that base level sharing that may have been originally set at that very, very top level, it gets stripped off, right? In my example, I had it to where anyone inside of my domain could view the contents, right? And so when the top level folder got deleted, that got pulled away from everything. Anything that was in that folder now is not viewable by anyone in the organization, right? And so the sharing settings getting affected is a big impact. But one of the things I didn't cover that might be in the questions here, Google also has that administrative restore functionality, right? If you go to the admin screen and find a user, you can kind of do, it says, oh, well, restore their deleted content. You can do that for up to, I think, 25 days. But same thing happens there. When that data gets restored, if I would have gone into Ryan's account, which I probably should have done, and used that administrative restore, you would have seen some of that data come back. The files, I don't believe the folders come back. But when they do come back, all the sharing is stripped off. All the sharing is gone. So again, that's still not a way to recover from the structure and the sharing and kind of that restored perfection that we focus on.
Right, and so that was actually one of the questions was talking about restoring. So you're killing it, Matt. So one of the questions was asking about restoring and what happens to all of the sharing settings and that sort of thing. So you just touched on that. With Google natively, you're going to lose that, and with Spanning, they kind of fill in the gaps there. This one I'm not exactly sure about, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. We had AO Docs present earlier today. Do you guys work with them at all with the file management solution? Yeah, no,
I've talked to those, I've talked to their team in the past at certain events, but we haven't done full technology integration there. So, our backup is going to cover, anything that's in Google Drive. If it's a pointer out to content that's elsewhere, right? And I don't know exactly how data AO Docs is structured. We can't pull that through Drive, but if there are files that reside in Drive, we would back that up. So I don't have a direct integration, but I'm happy to take that offline and do some investigation if somebody wants to pursue it further.
Great. And that kind of goes into another question that I saw asking about files that are stored on the Google Drive client, the local Drive client. And so how does spanning handle if a file is deleted from the Drive client? How does the restore process work there as opposed to deleting from the web interface?
Yeah, I went through some of those scenarios as I was kind of prepping for this webinar, and in general, the actions you take on your laptop mirror the ones that I did in the demo today, right? So I logged in as Ryan, I deleted the top level folder, and bad things happened, right? And so, very similar in that if I would have taken that folder on my laptop and dragged to my trash, it would have executed that same command, right? That it would have synchronized so that, the client would say, oh, a delete happened, synchronize that up to Google Drive. It would have ended up in the trash probably, right? So then it would either have aged out or you could go and delete it up there. But in general, the actions you take through the web interface and the actions you take in the Drive client, whether it's Windows or Macintosh, mirror pretty well, right? And so spanning backup is going to take action on the contents in Google Drive, right? So if things happen at the client that affect the cloud, right, affect Google Drive service, we'll react to that. We'll back data up. When we restore it, we put it back into Google Drive itself. As you can, if they want it synchronized back down, you can move that back to my drive and get that pulled down as well.
Great. And then real quick, we had a question about HIPAA and Spanning's relationship with that. So can you talk about Spanning HIPAA compliant and would you guys sign a BAA?
Sure, yeah. So Spanning today carries SSA 16 certification. We're working on HIPAA certification, but it's not quite ready yet. So stay tuned.
Great. And then we have a bunch of other questions. Let's see. I did see one on the event. Oh, that's where the question was. It wasn't the event page. Okay, let's see if we can go through here a couple more. Matt, did you guys want to discuss pricing at all on this, or is that something you guys would rather do offline? I'm not sure. I haven't checked into exactly how you guys handle that right now. So.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can go to the marketplace, you can go to our website and see. It's priced. List price is $40 a user a year, and that's unlimited storage, unlimited data, right? But there's we have education, nonprofit discounts as well as volume discounts. So definitely reach out to us and engage with us if you're interested.
Okay, so we have we're running out of time. We're right up against that deadline there, and we do actually have another presentation starting in a couple of minutes. So I want to let everybody has a chance to get over that presentation, to head on over. And I did want to say thank you very much to Matt for stopping by and putting together an awesome presentation. Yeah.
If you have more questions, Andrew, if you can send them to me, I'm happy to engage and answer. Otherwise, feel free to email me, matt.hamlin, Hamlin, @spanning.com, or just info@spanning.com.
Right, yeah, so Matt with one T at Hamlin@spanning.com and or info@spanning.com are both great ways to ask some more questions. And if you guys want to discuss pricing and take that off the presentation, you can do that there as well. So yeah, that wraps up our presentation, or this presentation for right now. We do have another presentation starting in just under a minute. So for all of those of you who want to move on over to there, please go right ahead. For those of you who hadn't had a chance to fill out the giveaways form, it's still up in the Showcase app, so you can check that out right before I sign off. But so that's all the time we have for right now. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Andrew.